Professor Grix-Talen adjusted his bioluminescent teaching strips, preparing for what he considered the most entertaining lecture of the semester. Human Military Effectiveness Analysis. The Advanced Warfare Studies classroom at Galactic University buzzed with anticipation as students from 12 different species settled into their adaptive seating arrangements. Today, we examine the statistical anomaly known as Terran combat efficiency, Grix-Talen announced, his 4 eyes gleaming with academic excitement. According to preliminary data gathered from various conflicts, humans demonstrate kill ratios that seem mathematically implausible. Yex4, a promising Nexarian student, raised one of his tentacles. Professor, surely those numbers must be exaggerated? My homeworld's military archives suggest humans are merely average combatants with superior equipment. A ripple of agreement passed through the classroom. Everyone knew the stories about humans, but most assumed they were propaganda designed to inflate the reputation of this relatively new species on the galactic stage. Ah, skepticism. Grix-Talen's mandibles clicked with approval. Excellent scientific approach, Yex4. Let us examine the data objectively. The holographic display activated, showing a series of battle statistics from recent interspecies conflicts. Numbers floated in the air like digital ghosts, each one representing thousands of lives lost and gained. The Battle of Kepler Station, Grix-Talen began, gesturing toward the first set of data. Human forces, approximately 3,000. Opposing Draknari fleet, 47,000. Outcome: complete human victory, with 96% casualty rate inflicted on Draknari forces. Sketh 9, a draconian military cadet, snorted dismissively. Impossible. The Draknari are professional warriors. No species could achieve those numbers against them without massive technological advantages. Your objection is noted, Grix-Talen replied. However, weapons analysis indicates both sides used comparable technology. The human advantage appears to be tactical creativity. Tactical creativity? This came from Velk Prime, whose species prided themselves on logical military doctrine. Warfare is mathematics, Professor. Superior numbers, better weapons, tactical positioning. Creativity is for artists, not soldiers. The professor's bioluminescent strips pulsed with amusement. Indeed. Then how do you explain the siege of Titan's Edge? Human defenders, 800. Attacking Vorthak's legion, 12,000. Duration, 72 standard hours. Result, human victory with less than 10% casualties. An uncomfortable silence fell over the classroom. The Vorthak's legion was legendary throughout the galaxy for their methodical approach to warfare. They had never been defeated by inferior numbers using conventional tactics. There must be errors in the data, Yex4 insisted. Perhaps the humans received reinforcements that weren't properly recorded. Negative, Grix-Talen replied, clearly enjoying the students' discomfort. All data has been verified through multiple independent sources. The humans appear to possess an unusual ability to improvise. Improvise? Velk Prime's translator struggled with the concept. You mean they make decisions without proper planning and analysis? Worse, the professor said with evident relish. They appear to make optimal decisions without proper planning and analysis. Their battlefield adaptability scores are literally off our measurement scales. Thex 7, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke up. Professor, what about the liberation of Proxima Colony? That's where the humans supposedly achieved a 1,000-to-1 kill ratio against Vorthak death squads. Grix-Talen's expression became more serious. Ah, yes, the Proxima incident. According to official reports, a single human unit of 50 soldiers eliminated an entire Vorthak invasion force of 50,000 elite warriors. The classroom erupted in protests and disbelieving chatter. The Vorthak were universally acknowledged as the galaxy's most feared military force. Their death squads had conquered entire star systems without suffering significant casualties. That's clearly fabricated propaganda, Sketh 9 declared. No species could achieve those numbers against Vorthak forces. They're genetically engineered for combat perfection. Furthermore, Velk Prime added, mathematical probability indicates such an outcome is statistically impossible. even accounting for environmental advantages or technological superiority. HFY waved his tentacles emphatically. Exactly. We're supposed to believe that 50 humans defeated 50,000 Vorthak warriors? That's not military prowess, that's fantasy literature. The debate grew more heated as students from various species contributed their own analyses of why the human combat statistics couldn't possibly be accurate. Some suggested data corruption, others proposed elaborate conspiracy theories involving falsified battle reports. What none of them noticed was the human sitting quietly in the back corner of the classroom. Corporal Bella Thorne had been auditing advanced warfare studies as part of the new interspecies military exchange program. She had arrived 3 weeks ago, ostensibly to learn about alien military doctrines. In reality, she was conducting her own assessment of galactic military capabilities for Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division. She found the academic discussion amusing. Bella had been on Proxima Colony during the Vorthak invasion. She had been part of the 50-soldier unit that Grix-Talen was describing with such obvious disbelief. More specifically, she had been the unit's heavy weapons specialist, and had personally accounted for approximately 2,000 confirmed kills during the 3-day battle. But she wasn't about to volunteer that information. Not yet. Perhaps, Grix-Talen continued, we should examine the methodology behind these statistics. How exactly do humans achieve such remarkable kill ratios? Luck, Sketh9 suggested sarcastically. Obviously, they're the luckiest species in the galaxy. Deception, countered Velk Prime. They must be using psychological warfare to inflate casualty reports. Equipment advantages, HFY proposed. Despite claims of technological parity, humans must possess superior weapons systems. Professor Grix-Talen listened to the theories with growing amusement. All interesting hypotheses. However, I should mention that we have independent verification of these statistics from multiple sources, including enemy survivors and neutral observers. Enemy survivors? Thek7 asked. From battles with 1,000-to-1 kill ratios? How many survivors could there be? More than you might expect, Grix-Talen replied. Interestingly, humans appear to have a peculiar habit of accepting surrenders and providing medical aid to wounded enemies. This is considered highly inefficient by most military doctrines. The students exchanged confused glances. Military efficiency was measured by the complete elimination of enemy forces. Accepting surrenders and treating wounded enemies was wasteful resource allocation. Wait, Velk Prime said slowly. You're suggesting that humans achieve superior kill ratios while simultaneously wasting resources on enemy survivors. Precisely. It appears to be a fundamental aspect of human military doctrine. They call it ethics. Sketh9 made a sound that might have been laughter in his species. Ethics? In warfare? That's completely illogical. War is about eliminating threats as efficiently as possible. Yet, somehow, Grix-Talen observed, this illogical approach consistently produces superior results. Human forces regularly defeat larger, better-equipped enemies while maintaining their ethical standards. There has to be an explanation, HFY insisted. Species don't just spontaneously develop impossible military capabilities. What makes humans different? The professor's bioluminescent strips flickered thoughtfully. According to our xenobiological studies, humans appear to possess several unusual characteristics. Enhanced pattern recognition, rapid adaptation to changing circumstances, and something their own military manuals describe as aggressive creativity. Aggressive creativity? Velk Prime's translator again struggled with the concept. That sounds like a contradiction in terms. Indeed. However, battlefield recordings show humans consistently developing novel tactical solutions in real time. They appear to treat warfare as a creative challenge. This statement caused another eruption of protests from the class. Warfare was serious business, governed by established doctrines and proven strategies. The idea of treating combat as a creative exercise was deeply disturbing to most military minds. Professor, Thek7 said carefully, are you suggesting that human military success is based on artistic inspiration? Not artistic inspiration precisely, more like applied imagination combined with ruthless pragmatism. They appear to excel at finding unconventional solutions to conventional problems. Bella couldn't help but smile slightly at this description. During the Proxima battle, her unit had used everything from mining explosives to agricultural equipment as weapons. When they ran out of standard ammunition, they had improvised using construction materials and industrial chemicals. One memorable engagement had involved turning a food processing plant into a fortress that could launch high-velocity canned goods at enemy positions. She doubted any of these alien military theorists would appreciate the tactical applications of properly weaponized fruit preserves. Still, Sketh9 persisted, the numbers don't add up. Even with superior tactics and creativity, 50 soldiers cannot eliminate 50,000 enemies without taking massive casualties themselves. Actually, Grix-Talen said, consulting his datapad, human casualties at Proxima were remarkably light. 7 wounded, none killed. The classroom fell completely silent. Even by the inflated standards they had been discussing, these numbers seemed impossible. 7 wounded. Yex4's voice was barely above a whisper. Out of 50 soldiers? Against 50,000 Vorthak? According to all available reports, yes. That's not military combat, Velk Prime declared. That's something else entirely. What else could it be? Thek7 asked. The professor's bioluminescent strips pulsed with what might have been concern. I'm not entirely certain. Human military capabilities appear to operate outside established paradigms for interspecies warfare. Bella shifted slightly in her seat, checking the chronometer on her wrist. The academic discussion was entertaining, but she had other commitments. Her real assignment involved evaluating whether any of these species posed a legitimate threat to human expansion plans. Based on what she had observed so far, the answer was probably no. Perhaps, Sketh9 suggested desperately, we should request access to actual human military personnel for direct consultation? Grix-Talen's mandibles clicked with amusement. An excellent suggestion. In fact, I believe we may have such an opportunity available. He gestured toward the back of the classroom where Bella sat quietly observing the discussion. Every alien eye in the room suddenly focused on her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Students, allow me to introduce Corporal Bella Thorne of the Terran Marine Corps. She has been auditing our classes as part of the Interspecies Military Exchange Program. Bella stood slowly, her movement casual but precise. Years of combat experience had taught her to present a relaxed exterior while remaining ready for immediate action. Not that she expected trouble from a classroom full of academics, but old habits died hard. Hello, everyone, she said pleasantly. I've been enjoying your discussion about human military statistics. The silence that followed was profound. None of the students seemed to know how to respond to an actual human, especially one who might have personal experience with the combat scenarios they had been analyzing. Finally, Yex4 found his voice. Corporal Thorne, perhaps you could provide insight into human tactical methodologies. Bella smiled, and something in her expression made several students unconsciously lean back in their seats. Well, that depends. What specifically would you like to know? The kill ratios, Velk Prime said bluntly. Are the statistics accurate? Which statistics? All of them, Sketh9 replied. The numbers seem improbable. Bella's smile widened slightly. Improbable how? Too high, Thek7 explained. The claimed kill ratios exceed theoretical maximums for conventional warfare. Ah, Bella said thoughtfully. I see the confusion. You're assuming these were conventional warfare scenarios. Professor Grix-Talen leaned forward with interest. What would you classify them as instead? Bella paused, considering how to explain the concept to beings who had never experienced human military doctrine firsthand. Target-rich environments. The phrase hung in the air like a physical presence. Somehow those 3 words contained more menace than any of the elaborate battle descriptions they had been analyzing. Target-rich environments? Yex4 repeated carefully. Situations where you have more valid targets than ammunition to deal with them efficiently. Requires careful resource management and creative problem-solving. You speak as if you have personal experience, Velk Prime observed. Bella's expression became completely neutral. Do I? The question carried implications that made the academic atmosphere suddenly feel much less safe. Several students began to realize that they might be in the presence of someone who had actually participated in the battles they had been dismissing as statistical impossibilities. "Were you?" Sketh9 began, then stopped as if afraid to complete the question. "Was I what? Were you at Proxima Colony?" Bella checked her chronometer again. "I should probably be going soon. I have a tactical assessment to complete." Which wasn't exactly an answer, but somehow felt more ominous than a direct confirmation would have been. "Wait," Thek7 said urgently. "Could you at least verify whether the casualty figures are accurate?" Bella paused at the classroom door, her hand resting casually on what the students now realized was probably a concealed weapon. "Professor Grix-Talen, what specific numbers did you give them for Proxima?" 50 human defenders, 50,000 Vorthak attackers, human casualties, 7 wounded, none killed. Bella appeared to consider this information carefully. "Those numbers aren't quite right." A collective sigh of relief passed through the classroom. Finally, someone was admitting that the statistics had been inflated. "The human casualty count is wrong," Bella continued. "It was actually 6 wounded, not 7. Jenkins was faking his injury to get out of cleanup duty." She left before anyone could respond, leaving a classroom full of stunned aliens contemplating the implications of what they had just heard. Professor Grix-Talen was the first to recover his voice. "Well," he said weakly, "that was educational." Outside the classroom, Bella made her way through the university corridors toward her next appointment. Her tactical assessment was proceeding ahead of schedule. The galactic species she had encountered so far were certainly intelligent, but their military thinking was constrained by conventional limitations. They thought in terms of mathematical probabilities and established doctrines. They couldn't conceive of warfare as a creative exercise where the rules changed constantly, and victory went to whoever adapted fastest. Which meant that if humanity ever needed to expand beyond their current territories, the galaxy's existing military powers would present minimal resistance. But that was a strategic consideration for much higher pay grades than hers. For now, she was content to let them continue believing that human military capabilities were statistical anomalies rather than the natural result of evolution on a world where everything was constantly trying to kill you. It was better for everyone that way. The silence in Professor Grix-Talen's classroom stretched like a dying star. Each student processing the casual way Corporal Bella Thorne had just confirmed their worst fears about human military capabilities. What had begun as an academic exercise in statistical analysis had suddenly become a very personal encounter with galactic reality. Yex-4 was the first to break the stunned quiet, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy. "Professor, did she just confirm that 6 humans defeated 50,000 Vorthak warriors?" "I believe," Grix-Talen replied carefully. "She corrected our casualty assessment, the implication being that our other numbers were accurate." Sketh9 stood abruptly, his scales shifting to the deep red coloration that indicated extreme agitation among his species. "This is impossible. The Vorthak are the most feared warriors in known space. They conquered my homeworld in 6 hours. Apparently," Velk Prime said with the dry precision of his logical species, "they encountered different tactical circumstances on your homeworld than they did on Proxima Colony." "Different tactical circumstances?" Sketh9's voice cracked with disbelief. What circumstances could possibly account for such a massive discrepancy in combat effectiveness? Professor Grix-Talen consulted his datapad with trembling appendages. "According to the historical records, the primary difference appears to be human involvement." Thek-7 had been unusually quiet since Bella's departure, his bioluminescent patches pulsing in patterns that suggested deep contemplation. "Professor, do we have access to any actual battlefield recordings from Proxima?" "The Galactic Military Archive contains some footage, but it was classified at the highest levels. I'm not certain we could obtain viewing permissions for an academic class." "Try," Thek-7 said urgently. "We need to understand what actually happened there." While Grix-Talen worked on his authorization requests, the students began discussing the implications of what they had learned. The comfortable assumptions that had guided their understanding of galactic military hierarchies were crumbling faster than a poorly constructed theory. Perhaps, HFY suggested hopefully, the human was exaggerating? Species are known to embellish their military accomplishments. She wasn't bragging, Velk Prime observed. Her correction was purely factual. She displayed no emotional investment in impressing us with her species' capabilities. Which makes it worse, Sketh9 muttered. If she was boasting, we could dismiss it as typical warrior posturing. But she treated those numbers like routine statistics. Routine? Thek7's patches flared brighter. You think eliminating 50,000 enemies is routine for humans? I think, Velk Prime said slowly, that eliminating 50,000 enemies might be routine for that particular human. The implication hit the classroom like a physical force. They had been debating abstract statistics, but Corporal Bella Thorne represented something much more concrete and terrifying, a living example of human combat capability. Success! Professor Grix-Talen announced suddenly. I've obtained temporary access to the Proxima Colony archives. Apparently the footage has been declassified for educational purposes. The holographic display activated, showing a bird's-eye view of Proxima Colony during the early stages of the Vorthak invasion. The settlement appeared to be a standard agricultural outpost. Modest buildings, farming equipment, and absolutely no visible military fortifications. Initial Vorthak landing forces, Grix-Talen narrated as dark shapes descended from orbit. Approximately 5,000 elite warriors in the first wave, with additional reinforcements arriving every 6 hours. The students watched as Vorthak drop pods crashed around the colony perimeter. The aliens that emerged were exactly as fearsome as their reputation suggested. 3-meter-tall apex predators with natural armor plating, and weapons that could punch through starship hulls. Where are the human defenders? HFY asked. I don't see any military installations. According to the records, the 50-person garrison was operating out of converted civilian structures. They had no dedicated military facilities. The footage showed Vorthak, warriors advancing in perfect formation toward the colony center. Their movement was methodical, professional, and utterly confident. These were beings who had conquered thousands of worlds using identical tactics. Then something exploded in their ranks. What was that? Sketh9 demanded, as the recording rewound to show the explosion again. Improvised explosive device, Grix-Talen read from his notes. Constructed from agricultural fertilizer and mining equipment. The blast eliminated approximately 200 Vorthak warriors. 200 from a single bomb? Thek7's patches were now strobing rapidly. That's remarkably efficient. It gets more interesting, the professor said grimly. The recording continued, showing the Vorthak forces adapting to the unexpected resistance. They spread out, advanced more cautiously, and began systematic reconnaissance of potential ambush sites. Which was when the second wave of surprises began. Buildings that had appeared to be simple agricultural structures suddenly revealed hidden firing positions. Farm machinery transformed into mobile weapons platforms. Irrigation systems became delivery mechanisms for chemical warfare agents. They turned the entire colony into a weapon, Velk Prime said with something approaching awe. Every civilian structure had been converted for military purposes. How long did they have to prepare? HFY asked. According to the timeline, approximately 18 hours between initial invasion warning and first enemy contact. 18 hours. Sketh9's scales had shifted to a pale yellow indicating shock. They converted an entire civilian settlement into a military fortress in 18 hours? Apparently so. And that's just the beginning. The footage showed Vorthak forces becoming increasingly frustrated as their standard tactics failed repeatedly. Conventional assault patterns were met with unconventional responses. When they tried to establish secure perimeters, hidden tunnels allowed human defenders to attack from unexpected directions. When they attempted orbital bombardment, the humans had somehow acquired and modified Vorthak communication equipment to jam their own targeting systems. They're using captured enemy technology against them, Thek7 observed, in real time, during active combat. The technical improvisation is remarkable, Velk Prime added. They appear to be reverse engineering Vorthak systems without any prior exposure to the technology. That's impossible, Sketh9 protested. Vorthak technology is based on completely different scientific principles than human systems. The compatibility requirements alone should make integration impossible. Yet, Professor Grix-Talen said, gesturing at the screen, here we see human defenders using modified Vorthak weaponry with apparent expertise. The recording showed a human figure that might have been Corporal Thorne operating what was clearly a Vorthak heavy plasma cannon. She had somehow mounted it on a civilian transport vehicle and was using it to devastating effect against enemy positions. How did they learn to operate alien weapons so quickly? Yex4 asked in a voice that suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. According to post-battle interviews with Vorthak survivors, the humans appeared to understand their technology intuitively. They treated complex alien systems like puzzles to be solved. Puzzles? Sketh9's voice cracked again. They treated military technology like entertainment? More concerning, Velk Prime noted. They were solving those puzzles faster than the original designers intended. Some of the weapon modifications shown in this footage exceed Vorthak engineering specifications. The battle recording continued for another 2 hours of real-time footage. What the students witnessed was unlike anything in their military education. This wasn't conventional warfare governed by established doctrines and predictable patterns. It was adaptive chaos, with human defenders constantly shifting tactics, improvising solutions, and turning every resource into a potential weapon. They used everything, Thex7 said in wonder. Food processing equipment, construction materials, even decorative plants. I saw one human using what appeared to be flower pots as projectile weapons. Effective projectile weapons, Grix-Talen corrected, consulting his analysis notes. The improvised ammunition achieved remarkable accuracy and stopping power. This is insane, Sketh9 declared. Warfare is supposed to be systematic, organized, logical. This is just creative vandalism on a massive scale. Creative vandalism that achieved complete victory, Velk Prime reminded him, with minimal casualties to their own forces. The final scenes of the recording showed Vorthak survivors surrendering to human forces. The feared warriors who had conquered star systems were requesting medical aid and expressing gratitude for being allowed to live. They're treating wounded enemies, Yex4 observed. Even after hours of intense combat, they're providing medical care to beings who were trying to kill them. Standard human military protocol, Grix-Talen explained. They appeared to distinguish between combat necessity and unnecessary cruelty. But why? Sketh9 asked. Dead enemies can't return to fight another day. Treating their wounds is strategically counterproductive. Perhaps, Thex7 suggested, their strategy operates on longer timelines than immediate tactical victories. What do you mean? Consider the psychological impact. Word of human military capabilities will spread throughout Vorthak space, but so will stories of human mercy toward defeated enemies. Future opponents will know they can surrender without being executed. Velk Prime's logical processing centers were working overtime. You're suggesting that human military doctrine includes psychological components designed to encourage enemy surrender rather than desperate resistance. It would explain the efficiency, Thex7 replied. If your enemies believe they have options other than fighting to the death, they're more likely to choose surrender when victory becomes impossible. Professor Grix-Talen was nodding slowly. The post-battle reports support that analysis. Vorthak command structure was significantly disrupted when survivors returned with stories of human combat capabilities and ethical treatment of prisoners. So humans achieve military dominance through a combination of tactical creativity and strategic psychology? Yex4 asked. Apparently so. They make resistance seem hopeless while making surrender seem reasonable. Sketh9 sat down heavily, his scales now displaying the modeled pattern that indicated existential confusion among his species. This changes everything we know about interspecies warfare. Indeed it does, Grix-Talen agreed. Traditional military doctrine assumes that superior numbers and technology determine outcomes. Human success suggests that adaptability and creativity might be more important factors. Which raises an uncomfortable question, Velk Prime said with characteristic directness. If humans can achieve these results against the galaxy's most feared military forces, What does that mean for the rest of us? The classroom fell silent as every student contemplated the implications. They represented some of the most militaristic species in known space, but none of their civilizations had ever achieved anything comparable to human combat effectiveness. Perhaps, Yex4 suggested hopefully, humans are naturally peaceful and only fight when forced to defend themselves. That's possible, Thek7 replied. The Proxima engagement was clearly defensive in nature. Actually, Professor Grix-Talen said while consulting his files, I have records of several human offensive operations as well. The results are similar. Similar how? Sketh9 asked, though his tone suggested he dreaded the answer. Overwhelming tactical success achieved through unconventional methods, minimal human casualties, ethical treatment of prisoners, and long-term strategic advantages. Show us, Velk Prime demanded. Very well. Here's footage from the liberation of Epsilon Base, where human forces successfully assaulted a fortified Kraxan military installation. The new recording showed human soldiers attacking what appeared to be an impregnable fortress. The Kraxan defenders had every possible advantage: superior numbers, prepared positions, automated defense systems, and orbital support. The humans won anyway. They're using the environment against the defenders, Yex4 observed as human forces turned a nearby asteroid field into an improvised siege weapon. They've somehow convinced the automated defense systems to target Kraxan positions instead of human attackers, Thek7 added in amazement. And they're doing it, all while maintaining communication discipline and coordinated tactical movements, Velk Prime noted. This isn't random chaos, it's organized creativity. The recording showed human forces achieving complete victory in less than 6 hours, despite facing odds that should have made success impossible. Once again, human casualties were remarkably light, and captured Kraxan personnel were treated with professional medical care. This is their standard operating procedure, Sketh9 said quietly. Win impossible battles while maintaining ethical standards and suffering minimal losses. Which leads to our final question, Professor Grix-Talen said seriously. What should the galactic community do with this information? The students exchanged glances, each representing species that had built their civilizations on assumptions of military superiority that had just been thoroughly demolished. Diplomatic outreach? Yex4 suggested weakly. Trade agreements, Thek7 proposed. Economic partnerships rather than military competition. Preemptive surrender, Sketh9 muttered. Save everyone the trouble of getting defeated later. Or, Velk Prime said with logical precision, we could attempt to learn from their methods and improve our own military capabilities. Professor Grix-Talen's bioluminescent strips pulsed thoughtfully. All valid approaches. However, I suspect the humans have already considered these possibilities. What do you mean? Corporal Thorne wasn't here for educational purposes. She was conducting an assessment. The implications hit the students like a physical blow. They had been debating human military statistics while an actual human combat veteran evaluated their species' capabilities and strategic thinking. Assessment of what? Yex4 asked in a small voice. Threat level, most likely. She was determining whether any of our civilizations pose a legitimate challenge to human expansion plans. And her conclusion? Professor Grix-Talen looked around the classroom at faces representing the galaxy's most militaristic species, all of whom now appeared thoroughly demoralized by their encounter with human military reality. Based on our reactions today, I suspect her assessment was quite favorable, from a human perspective. Outside the university, Corporal Bella Thorne was completing her final report for Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division. Her assessment was brief and to the point. Local military capabilities pose minimal threat to human expansion. Recommend proceeding with diplomatic outreach and economic integration. Force projection unnecessary at this time. She paused before adding. Note: local species appear to be educationally motivated. Suggest offering military training programs as goodwill gesture. Could improve galactic stability while ensuring continued strategic advantage. After all, the best way to maintain military superiority was to make sure everyone else was fighting by your rules. And humans had always been excellent teachers.